What is the dynamic in play with Jews and slavery in Jamaica?
Yeah, so this is obviously a huge aspect of what I write about, and the reason I write about this so much is because it was a very conspicuous aspect of the wills. Yeah. As I was reading the wills, you find that that slave populations are being bequeathed en masse, and in that they're being named individually. And also you see a lot of evidence, sometimes very direct and articulate, of concubinage or relationships, sexual relationships with women of color, both enslaved and free, and then incorporating their children and to some extent into the family through voluntary inheritance. So that all made me realize that we need to address the issue of Jewish slave ownership. Over time, I've also realized that this has been the subject of competing tendencies, one coming from a anti-Jewish position like the Nation of Islam that wanted to make the case that Jews were overly represented in the slave trade and were overly abusive to slaves, and that's not true. In fact, it's kind of puzzling why Jews weren't more involved in the slave trade, since it was a totally open type of endeavor that had no guilds or protections like that. And Jews owned slaves to the same extent that everybody else did, so there were no particularities. Now, this stands in contrast to a rival kind of mentality where Jews must have treated their slaves better, because how could you be sitting at a Passover Seder saying we were once slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt while being served by slaves? But people did that. And so some scholars reached an apologetic conclusion in the 20th century saying that Jews manumitted their slaves more readily or treated them better. And I find that no position really captures the truth. So in fact, I crunched the numbers in my wills, and I found that slaves were about 11 times more likely to be bequeathed than they were to be freed by Jews. So it's very uncommon to actually free manumit slaves. And there are cases of Jewish abuse of slaves. And then there are plenty of cases of manumissions. In one case, he manumits a Jewish slave owner manumits his quote-unquote mulatto son because of the love and affection he has for him. So there are cases of sort of sentimentality as well. But Jews are like everybody else. There are some abusive slave owners, and there are some that own slaves because that's what's done in the colony that they live in.